This is a Eurofar review of King and Assassins by Lukas Wozniak, which is a two-player game. It's a deduction game. It's a relatively portable package. You can see that this is not a large box, and it tends to play very quickly. You can easily get through a game in half an hour, maybe 20 minutes even. It's asymmetric, so one side will be playing the king and his knights, and the other side are going to be playing a bunch of sort of rowdy citizens. And the game is short enough that you can swap sides after a game and play again and have a more balanced sort of experience playing both sides. Now, the story of the game is that the king is trying to get through the city, and they're trying to work their way through a huddle of citizens to gain entrance to their castle. They have knights that are protecting them, and the knights have to control the crowd. Now, amongst the crowd are hidden 3 assassins, and the king's side don't know who these assassins are, although the player controlling the citizens will know secretly which 3 of them are assassins. When they reveal themselves as assassins, they become much quicker, and they can attack the king, and the player controlling the citizens and assassins wins the game by killing the king. Now, the knights can move the citizens, they can push them around, get them out of the way. They can also arrest citizens if they suspect them of being assassins, and they can certainly kill assassins once the assassins have been revealed. So the king's side, they win the game if the king manages to get into the castle, or if all 3 assassins have been killed or captured. The assassin side win if the king has been killed, or if the number of rounds runs out, so the game is over and the king has not yet entered the castle. It's a tight game, it's a tense game, and I'll show you how to play it in a moment, and then I'll tell you what I think of the game. The board of the game is reversible. This is the initial setup on one side of the board. So you can see that the king, who is the green character in the top corner here, is hidden away in the corner surrounded by knights. These brown characters are all citizens of various different types, although they all play exactly the same. You've got more knights up here, and the entrances to the castle are these spaces here, and there's one behind this guy over here as well, so they're marked there. The spaces where the citizens start and the knights start are all marked on the board. At the beginning of the game, the player who is controlling all of the citizens gets to choose from this collection of cards here which 3 they want to be the assassins. So they could choose these 3, for example, and then they find the relevant pieces on the board and they remember which ones they are, and they put these to one side. The king is able to, the king player can control the king and each of the blue knights which guard the king as well. On each round of the game, one of these cards is turned over from the deck, and this tells us how many action points there will be available during this round. So during this round, the king has 1 action point, the knights have 6 action points to share between them, and the assassins have 5 action points, and the citizens to share between them. There's also a mark down here for handcuffs or shackles. This is not on every card, but when there is this on the card, then an additional action becomes available to the knight player to arrest one of the citizens. It doesn't have to be an assassin. He's not likely to know who the assassins are, but you can take a guess based on the movement of the citizen stroke assassin player. We've got these boards which describe what the action points are allowed to be spent on. So for the king's side, the king, all he can do is move from one space to another for 1 action point. And usually in a turn, the king will either have 1 or maybe sometimes 2 action points available to him. So he's not moving very far, very quickly, and there's not many of these cards, so he needs to be making constant progress towards the castle. He can't make too many detours, otherwise the time will run out and the assassins will win. The knights have a few more options available to them. They can move from space to space for 1 action point. They can move along on the rooftops as well, so this guy can move from here to here for 1 action point. They can move from the roof onto the ground floor, that's 1 action point, but coming back up the other way, so climbing onto the roof, is 2 action points. The knights also have the ability to shove the citizens, so if this knight here moves into this space, then the citizen will be pushed back. So in that way they can control the crowds. They can even push a large number of citizens at once. So you could have a situation where you have 2 citizens, This guy moves into here, which will push both of them back. So in this way, the knights can control the crowd quite effectively. So that's what this is about here. 0 AP, although it's going to take 1 AP for him to move in order to shove them. The shackle symbol here, so if there is a shackles on the round card, then the knight's going to rest a citizen for 1 AP, and if there is an assassin on the board who has been revealed, they can kill an assassin for 1 AP. Okay, so that's the king and his knights. The assassins and the citizens, well, starting with these citizens, they work very similarly. They can move 1 space for 1 AP, they can move on a rooftop, they can move from a rooftop to a ground floor space, and they can move from the street onto a rooftop for 2 AP. So the same as the knights' movements, although they're unable to shove people and obviously they don't have shackles. At any point in their turn, they can reveal themselves to be an assassin, in which case the player who's revealing himself can be replaced with this assassin token. Now obviously the only people who can do this are the assassins that were chosen at the beginning of the game, so these 3 characters that we chose at the beginning. If they become an assassin, then they can still move 1 space and they can still move on the rooftop, but now they can move from the roof to the floor for free, and they can move onto the roof for 1 AP instead of 2. So they become much quicker. However, if they're going to put any wounds onto the king, it costs them 2 AP, which is quite a high cost. And they can also kill knights, 1 AP for the first knight and 2 AP for a second one in the same turn. Their aim of the game is to wound the king once. If the king is wounded once, then his marker here gets turned to the wounded side, which is here, and then if he gets wounded a second time, he's removed from the game and the assassins win. So that's how you play King and Assassins. The reverse of the board has an alternate sort of town layout and 2 different options for where you can place the king, but otherwise plays exactly the same. So there's a little bit of variety there. But essentially this is a quick game. It's very strategic and tactical based on where people move. So there's quite, although the rule set is very, very simple, there is quite a lot of thought that you can put into it and little strategies that you can put into play. So here's where I tell you what I think of the game. I think King and Assassins is a good 2-player game. It's portable, it's very simple to teach, it plays very quickly, and there's some depth and tension here, but it's certainly not a heavy game, and it's not something you're going to want to play over and over and over again. But for something where you're short of time, or for a couple, or as a little filler for 2 players while waiting for someone else to turn up, it's an excellent game and packs a lot of strategic thinking into a short time span. It's similar sort of genre to games like Mr. Jack, Mr. Jack in New York and Le Fantôme de l'Opéra, that's the new Mr. Jack title, a deduction game along those sort of lines. It's slightly more distant relative of things like Scotland Yard, Letters from Whitechapel and those sort of hidden movement games. But compared to Mr. Jack, which is its most obvious sort of relation, this is much simpler in terms of the rule set. There's far fewer rules that you have to learn up front because all the different citizens all play exactly the same. There's no difference between them. Now, that can, if you go into it with the mindset of thinking you're going to be playing something like Mr. Jack, you could be looking for a little bit more meat in the game. You could be looking for something more that could be going on. But once you accept that this is actually a very light game, certainly very light on rules, then you can just enjoy the strategies and the tension that arises, and actually it becomes its own beast. I don't think it replaces Mr. Jack, for example, but certainly if I didn't have the time to invest with teaching somebody to play that game, then this is a much quicker one to just pull out, quick game, get it over and move on to other games from there. So as a filler, as I say, for 2 players where you're waiting for somebody else, this is great. Or if you're short of time, and you've only got 2 players, then this is a good game to fit in. It's also portable, nice small box, easy to take away on holiday with you, or if you're going away for a night, or you want to play it on the train or whatever. This is a simple game to fit into those sort of timescales. It's a good game. I don't think the artwork and the sort of setting is as sort of light and fluffy as you get in those sort of Mr. Jack games. I find them a little more attractive than this. But that said, it's decent artwork when you sort of look closely. You know, they're so small to actually see them. This designer, Lucas Wozniak, I really enjoyed one of his games from last year's Essen, which was Mercurius, a stocks and shares game, very different to this, much heavier. But I mention it because he's a new up-and-coming designer, and so far, for me, it's 2 hits. 2 out of 2, so that's great. I'm not sure if he's designed other stuff or whether these are his first 2 games. I'll have to have a look. But solid game. If you like deduction games, you can't go wrong with this. There's a lot in this package. It's not an expensive package. I think it's well worth a look.